Hi guys, this is Dr. Gonzalez here. Excuse me. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through your assignment for week 2 of experimental methods and statistics. So during this assignment, I'm going to explain to you step by step what you need to do. There is a template for the assignment that is also uploaded into Canvas. And I'm also including these notes for this presentation in case you want to go back and refer to them. I'm also going to refer back to the validity notes frequently. And if you happen to see any errors in this particular presentation that say non-experimental, please disregard that. This is for experimental methods and statistics. There's overlap between the two courses, and it's possible that I might have missed replacing one of those words here and there. So here we go. In this week's assignment, you're going to tell me again what your research question is. Remember, our research questions come from that approved list that I posted in Canvas. If you had a research question that wasn't on that list, you should have reached out to me last week so that I could talk to you about the appropriateness of your question. So if you haven't done that, stop before you continue with this assignment and reach out to me. I am totally open to you coming up with and using your own question. I just need to make sure that it's appropriately framed for this course. After you've written your research question at the top of the template, you're also going to tell me a definition of your variables. This is where we're going to operationalize them and describe them so that we know how and what you're measuring. Next, you're going to address validity, and then you're going to tell me about the measures that you intend to use. Now, Part 1 should be pretty easy for you. All you've got to do is write your research question again. And the only reason why I ask you to do that is because it gives me a point at the top of your assignment where I can refer back to what you're doing. I've made up a research question for the purposes of the examples in this video and notes. And my example research question is, does the use of a relaxation app increase sleep quality across different sleep chronotypes in adults? I'm sure you guys know what sleep quality is, even though I'm referring to it here as a theoretical construct. I'm going to operationalize it later. But you may not have heard the term sleep chronotype. Sleep chronotype is the scientific way of saying someone is a morning person or an evening person or a night owl. Okay, so I can determine a person's sleep chronotype by giving them this questionnaire and scoring it, and then I'm going to use that data to appropriately group my people in this study. Now, your study may not be set up this way. You might only have one thing that you need to use a measure for to collect data. So say, for example, you wanted to see the effect of caffeine on sleep quality. Caffeine is what you're going to be using for your independent variable, and you don't need any sort of measure to classify that. It's caffeine. You give it maybe 100 milligrams and 200 milligrams, and then a group that gets none. In my particular study, and the way this is set up here, I've got to identify a person's sleep chronotype first. They're all going to use this app. But when I go to do my statistical analysis later, I need to be able to look at morning people and night people and do my appropriate statistics. Now, let's talk about statistics for just a moment. We haven't even begun to talk about the different stats that we're going to use in these papers. That's okay. Right now, we're focusing more on the setup of the experiment, right? And the way we're going to collect our data. You're not going to identify the statistic first and then go back and figure out the experimental design. What you are basically doing at this point in time is the legwork for your experimental design. Once you have your design identified, then you'll come up with the stats. So we'll worry about all of that later. Just remember, this is experimental. It has to have a manipulated independent variable, and it's going to have random assignment when we get to sampling next week. All right. So in part one, you're going to identify your variables, and you're going to start by talking about the constructs, providing an operational definition, and then talking about the operational definitions in terms of your independent and dependent variables. So in my particular study, I happen to have two constructs. You may not, and that's okay. You do need to have one construct at least, because that's the quote thing that you're studying. But I want to see if using this app causes a difference in the quality in specific groups of people. So I need to be able to measure sleep quality, and I also need to be able to identify the chronotype of my participants. So this is a little bit different, but I just wanted to go through it so that you could see an example of where more than one measure was used for two different variables. So talking about constructs here, remember, constructs are going to be broad, overarching, theoretical concepts or terms. They can easily be interpreted differently by different people. And that's okay. That's what a construct is. It is a broad theoretical idea. So I'm just talking about sleep quality as a construct and sleep chronotype as a construct. Now let's go a little bit further in depth. We need to operationally define sleep quality and sleep chronotype. So in this part, you're just going to write some descriptions of how you're defining your construct in a way that is operational. And by operational, I mean I can go out there and collect data on this concept, and I can talk with other scientists and researchers about it, and we're all on the same page. So sleep quality, I'm going to define it as the overall quality and pattern of a person's sleep. I'm going to measure it using a validated tool. And I'm going to talk about that tool later in this assignment under measures, okay? You can mention it here. I just didn't happen to mention the name of it. The validated tool that I'm going to use for sleep quality is called the Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index, or the PSQI, okay? And in that PSQI, it collects data on a lot of different aspects that we combined together to define sleep quality. So it includes things like how long you've slept, which is sleep duration, how many times you wake up during the night, sleep latency, which is how long it takes for you to fall asleep, sleep disturbance, how many times you felt disturbed by something, and the impact of your sleep on your daily functioning, or sleepiness, you could say. Then I'm going to operationally define sleep chronotype as well. Luckily, there is a questionnaire out there, a 19-question questionnaire called the Morningness Eveningness Questionnaire. And in that questionnaire, the participants answer questions about their preferred time for doing activities like sleep or being awake or other daily things they have to do. It's validated, and what it does is it helps me classify my participants as morning, intermediate, or evening, depending on their score. All right, let's continue by talking about our independent variable. Remember, in experimental research, an independent variable has to be manipulated. In this particular scenario, my manipulation comes through assigning my participants to groups based on whether or not they're going to use the relaxation app or not use it. So what I'm trying to do is establish a causal relationship. Does using this app cause you to have better or worse sleep quality? Okay, I'm assuming better. That would be the purpose of doing this. I would not want to create an app that would cause you to sleep worse. So I've already identified my chronotypes, and that's going to come into play later on when we talk about research design. But for now, all I really need to focus on is explaining that my IV is manipulated. And the actual manipulation comes by placing my participants into two groups. Either they use the app or they don't use the app. And by assigning them to those groups randomly, I am meeting the requirements of a true experiment. Remember, a true experiment needs to have a manipulated independent variable and random assignment. So I am identifying them as either morning or evening people. But after I've identified them, I'm going to take my morning people and I'm going to put one in a group that gets the app and the next one in a group that doesn't. And I'm going to keep doing that randomly so that they are meeting, I am meeting that requirement for it to be an experiment. Next, you're going to talk about your dependent variable. The dependent variable is frequently referred to as your response variable. And in this particular scenario, my dependent variable is going to be sleep quality. So what I'm trying to do is establish a causal relationship between using this app and sleeping better. So I expect sleep quality to increase after using the app. So my sleep quality is responding to the use of the app, and that makes it a response variable. And response variables are also called dependent variables. So you're going to go in and you're going to do basically what I just did for this example, talking about your particular variables for your research question. Next, we're going to talk about validity. And for this particular part of your assignment, I highly suggest that you print out or have handy the notes on validity that are in Canvas, because we discussed what these concepts are, then we talked about threats to them, and we talked about how researchers can identify and address those threats. And that's what you need to do in this section. So let's start first with construct validity. And in construct validity, we are attempting to answer the question, are we measuring the right thing? So what you need to do is make sure that your measure that you're going to use covers all of the relevant aspects of your theoretical construct. So let's talk about how you're going to do that. So in my particular question here, I've already said I'm going to need a measure to look at sleep quality and a measure to look at sleep chronotype. Sleep quality, as defined in my operationalized definition earlier, had a lot of different components to it. Sleep duration, sleep latency, number of times you wake up at night, etc. So what you need to do mainly here for construct validity is to make sure that you're measuring everything that you can in order to fully paint a picture of the construct that you're researching. Okay? I shouldn't, for example, if I was looking at sleep quality and I simply said, I'm going to measure how long a person sleeps at night, I am not fully collecting all of the information to paint that picture about their sleep quality. All I'm looking at is how long they slept. That is a very poor definition of how I'm going to measure that construct. So if you go back to the notes, you'll see that there are a lot of different ways that I've talked about threats and how to address them. So go back to those notes, look at those things for construct validity, and then come back and in a paragraph tell me I'll address construct validity by, and then listing out what you're going to do. So define it and then tell me how you're going to address it. For statistical validity, you're going to do the same thing. But right now, you might be going, well, I don't know what I'm even doing as far as a statistic. And that's okay. You're not at the point yet where you need to identify what statistic you're using. Basically, what you need to say in this section is, are my statistical conclusions accurate, reliable, and appropriate given the data and methods used? So you not knowing which stat you're going to use is okay, because you're going to assure the reader of this assignment, which is me, you're going to assure me that you're going to achieve statistical validity by using the appropriate statistic, by making sure you have enough participants to reach a power level that is significant, by making appropriate claims based on the results that you get. So the most important thing right here is not that you know what stat you're using, because you shouldn't know that just yet. It's more, here are the things I'm going to take into consideration when choosing a statistic, when analyzing my data, and then finally by making a decision based on the statistics that I ran. Internal validity is essential in an experiment, because an experiment works to form a statement about a causal relationship. We want to know that your independent variable caused changes in your dependent variable. So there's 3 specific sub-questions that we need to address. Did my independent variable actually cause those changes in the DV? Did I control for any other variables? Could something else have possibly explained these results? So if you go back and look at the notes about internal validity, there is a set of specific actions that will help you address the threats. So in your answer, I just want you to define what internal validity is, identify some of the threats that are listed, and then tell me how you will address those threats in order to achieve high internal validity. Finally, you're going to address external validity. And you'll also recognize from the notes that there's a trade-off between internal and external validity. As you increase one, you decrease the other. So you might want to address that in your response. But external validity is concerned with how well your results apply to other situations, times, or people, or settings. So if you go and review your notes about external validity, there's a list of threats in there, and then you can address the ways that you can make your results more valid instead of less valid. And that is basically all you're going to do for the validity portion. Now, the third part is the part where you might need to go and do a little bit of legwork and research. You're going to need to identify validated measures that you're going to use to collect your data. This is a wonderful opportunity for you to use ChatGPT or another AI tool out there to help you in your assignment. You could easily run over to ChatGPT and say, hey, is there a validated measure out there to measure sleep quality? And I haven't actually done that, but I would hope that one of the things that it would pop up with is the Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index, which is what I would use in this particular research question right there. Now, using ChatGPT or Google to help you identify the tool is only one thing. You need to make sure that that tool that you have identified is an actual tool that exists, and that it has, most importantly, had its validity checked and reviewed through research, because you're going to need to cite that measure in APA format and tell me why that measure is appropriate for use in your paper. So if you go over to the library online here, right, you know how to get to the Alfred R. Newman Library, and you scroll down to APA tests, APA psych tests right here, you'll come up with a search engine that will let you, it's taking a minute, that will let you search for measures only, okay? And this is important because it would be hard to go through all of the other, if I went over here to just like Psych Info and ran this query, it would come up with all kinds of stuff that I don't want to use. I want to make sure I'm using psych tests because it gives me measurements and scales, and that's what we're doing. So I've been mentioning the PSYC a lot here. This is the PSYC, the Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index, when it's ran through APA psych tests. It tells me the source, it tells me the purpose, it tells me the description of the questionnaire. Some of this stuff might be useful for you in writing your conceptual, your operational definition back at the beginning. Now, I mentioned to you, you could go to Google, and if you go to Google and you Googled the PSYC, the first thing that you come up with is the actual Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index. And they talk about the way it's scored, its reliability and validity. That's an important part of this, okay? And I can be assured that this is a good place to go, a reputable source, because it says right here, University of Pennsylvania Perelman School of Medicine, and this is actually legit. And I can keep going. I can go underneath here and look at more information about it. So apparently these are the three guys that came up with it. So you feel free to Google this, but come back to this particular search engine right here so that you can make sure that the measure that you're using is actually an existing measure that is valid and reliable. I did the same thing for my morningness, eveningness questionnaire, and I chose to use the reduced one here because this one just is shorter. But this is where I get all of that information. There's my validity right there, my reliability, and those are things that you need to know. This is what you need to do right here. This is the citation that you would use. But you need to do that research there to make sure that your measures that you're going to use aren't just made up things out there, that there is some actual research behind them, because you also need to cite them in APA format in your assignment. If you need help on how to do that, you need to pull out that APA style guide. That was one of the required books for this class. So basically this screen here is just telling you how I got those two measures. I'm going to use the PSYC. I did a search on the APA PSYC test for sleep chronotype. Going to use the reduced morningness eveningness questionnaire. Found it the same way. You don't need an actual copy of the measure, but if you can find it, it's cool to look at. Like I said earlier, I Googled this and I came up with it. And then I could go to psych tests and verify my information. So make sure you use discretion if you do use AI or Google to help you find a good questionnaire or measure. So just to summarize in this assignment, you're going to upload when you're finished. Make sure you've typed your name at the appropriate place at the top, because sometimes I do print these out. I'm going to read your responses and I will provide you with feedback. Please read the feedback, because you need to incorporate that into your parts of your final paper. If you put the legwork in now, writing your paper in July will be a much easier thing. So remember, if you have any questions or concerns, reach out to me via email. I will be traveling this weekend, so I wanted to make sure I had all of this information put up in Canvas before I left. So I might take just a little bit longer to respond than normal, but I will get back to you, and I am here if you have any questions or comments or concerns. Take care and good luck.